No one's eating this time. Okay, so what are we talking about this week?
So this week we're talking about career changes, job hopping, company loyalty, and I think the reason I wanted to speak about it is because it's been a hot topic amongst my friends this week. Thinking about, we're asking each other as we're coming to the end of university, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? And I said, I don't know what my 10-year plan is, but I know there are going to be career breaks. I've already included that in because 9 to 5 for the rest of my life, I don't know if I can do it. I have another friend who is training to be a teacher. And I was asking her, do you want to do this for the rest of your life? In a very non-condescending way. And she was like, no, I would love to do something after about 20 years. Which is actually quite popular in teaching. It's quite hard to find teachers who last more than 15 years for various different reasons. And I think that's probably more, you're going to find that trend in the public sector a lot more than the private sector for obvious reasons. So I wanted to ask you guys about it. David, I know you've had a lot of jobs. Gabriel, what do you see yourself doing in 10 years? Do you see a career change in that? And why do you think people are less loyal to companies now and find it easier to make career changes? That was a good intro.
Gabriel? Yeah. That was a good intro.
Yeah.
Ironically, I was just listening to something similar today. I mean, the whole topic wasn't similar, but one of the things they were mentioning is just the idea of having career check-ins and having a system for how you define or consider whether or not you're enjoying your career. Ironically, I feel like it's something I was already doing, or it's something that already fits with how I plan my life anyway. But we can get to that. Gabriel, what are your thoughts?
I think this is quite interesting because I have quite often found myself thinking, I don't know if I'm ready to work for someone else. But if anything, I'm finding that working for other people, or working with other people, I should say, because a lot more companies are kind of trying to adopt that mindset more, isn't what I would think it would be. Because like in comparison to like my experiences when it like in terms of like struggling to in terms of having to do stuff for like with my parents, for example, if I get something wrong, I'm getting like there's a negative consequence that comes out of that, in a sense that I'm going to be quote unquote disciplined or whatever. But if you get something wrong in a team environment when you're working with people, if you're not being efficient, or something's not happening, you don't get cautioned for it. And I've been being open to that a bit more, kind of like one, working with you guys, and two, working with other people. I've recognized that, you know what, there might be a space for me working for someone else. I guess in terms of where I would like to see myself in 10 years, though, I do like the idea of having freedom, but that freedom isn't really going to be achieved in my life without particular sacrifices. Like right now, I have a lot more time, and I can be a lot more flexible with it. But in terms of the money to be able to go to particular places, it's only as far as my overdraft can stretch. Like at the moment, it's only as far, and I don't even like dipping into that, because really and truly, I don't have the flow to just re-up that, because so once my overdraft finishes, I mean, I'm cool. Like I'm not gonna have to pay it back until like a year after I've graduated. But I feel like I'm quite limited here with the whole money thing. Whereas if I'm employed, yeah, cool, I've got the money, I'm built, I'm stacking in comparison to how I've been as a student, but I haven't got as much time. I'm trapped in the 9 to 5. I've got to stick to a particular schedule to get to work. And I can't do that. I can't miss work or be late so many times before someone clocks on it and repercussions happen. But yeah.
That's interesting. So would you say that probably one of your main motivators then is just not wanting to have one specific boss and wanting to be able to, I guess, manage your time for yourself?
Yeah, I feel like that is something that's becoming more important to me. being able to work on my own schedule and work on my own time. And I realized that there are potential trade-offs with that. So like working on my own time means no one tells me what to do, which is a good thing, but no one tells me what to do, which is also the bad thing. And having no one to tell you what to do means that you can be more productive and you can be honest with yourself. But if no one tells you what to do, then deadlines will come around and slap you in the face and just remind you that, you know what, like, even though this assignment they recommended it will take like a month, I bet you I could do it in a week. And sometimes I can. That's how I work. But not all the time. But it hasn't really failed me as of yet. I haven't had a complete like breakdown to the extent that I've been like, oh yeah, I actually can't do this. I can't take on this challenge. I've just got to put it aside. But yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, go on, JJ. What are you saying?
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, I feel like that's a big motivator for me, having career breaks, and possibly making a change after, because I kind of get, I feel like stagnant if I'm doing one thing for too long, especially, but it's hard to say because I'm not in work full time, and I'm only in education full time. So I don't know if it's going to cross over to the workplace, but I know when I've been leaving secondary school, leaving college or sixth form, leaving uni, at the end of that process, I'm very much like, yes, I'm very much ready to leave. I'm ready for a new challenge. I want to try something completely different. I want to take a big risk. So it will be interesting to see if that continues as I get older. But for now, I kind of feel like the way it's so easy to learn skills nowadays, you can, go on LinkedIn Learn, you can go on Coursera, all these companies I'm giving publicity for free. But, you can pick up skills certificates, all these different things super quickly. So I just kind of feel like, okay, take a break so I don't get burnt out. And I'm talking like every 5 years. So it's not like every year I'm like, okay, I'm off for 6 months or anything like that. You still want it to look good on your CV. Maybe like every 5 years, or when I feel like I'm ready for a promotion or whatever, I take a break and then I learn some new skills and try and just readjust, pivot into a new sector. So I don't bored, and that's kind of like making the 9 to 5 work for me, just like you're talking about with like the being able to rely on people in a team so everything's not falling on you. I guess I'm kind of avoiding bearing the brunt of the expectation of only having this one career path. So if I say, okay, I'm gonna be, I don't know, a marketing executive, everyone's going to say in 15 years time you should be the chief of marketing, da, 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 da. So I'm kind of like avoiding that like horrible milestone, that horrible deadline, by being like, oh well, I'm doing this stuff along the way, but it's also beneficial to me because I get to try different things. And I feel like in today's world as well, the jobs that we have now is definitely not jobs that we're going to have in 10 years time. So I might train now to be like a marketing executive who can use Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. But in 10 years' time, I don't think Instagram is going to exist. And I don't think people are going to be marketing on Facebook unless they make some massive comeback or whatever, or something happens. So I think there's a lot of value in that as well, just kind of keeping my options open for the future. So it's two things. I'm avoiding responsibility, but also trying to keep my skill set agile for the future.
What do you think about, in terms of keeping your skill set agile and everything you were explaining, do you not feel it might be worthwhile niching down or spending some time in order to become an expert at one thing? Or would you prefer being more multipolar, but at the risk of not necessarily being an expert at any of those things?
Yeah, I mean, that's what my mom will say, the breadth or depth debate. Mom is like, you've done an undergraduate in psychology, go do a master's, go do a PhD, go get to the level where nobody can tell you anything. You can't learn anymore. Do you know what I mean? You're the one telling people what they should be learning. But I don't know. I just feel like, number one, work is not my life. So, and number two, I have a lot of interest in different things. So because I'm not like married to this one job or this one career path. There's nothing that I feel now where I'm like, okay, I want to know this in depth. Again, that might change. You know, like I said, I'm coming from, my whole background is in education, where I've done loads of different subjects, and now I've honed in on one. And I've decided that this one isn't for me. But if I did a different subject at university, maybe it would be a whole different story. So I can't say anything with too much certainty now. Come back in 10 years' time. But I know that I want to go back to uni in the future. I know that I would like to do a master's in something else. I would like to do further research in something else. But yeah, I don't think there's anything right now that makes me want to go in depth, basically.
I think that's really interesting. What I find interesting is, one, I guess your approach to expertise, your approach to the opportunity for growth and learning as a model in general. But yeah, it's interesting hearing from both of you, I guess, both being in the educational sphere. But I guess this is my insight into Gen Z and what you guys are thinking. But I find it really interesting that, you know, you're already entering the workplace with an idea of wanting to like take a break down the line or thinking about career changes, which is very different to, I don't know if it's particularly because I was studying law, but then my whole goal, and I was very much kind of the opposite from what you said, JJ, in terms of my almost sole goal was becoming an expert in that field. And that's pretty much all I cared about. And I just thought, if I'm going into law, I want to go to a top law firm, I want to become a partner, blah, blah, blah. And obviously that changed, and that developed when I was in law over the course of several years. But I think I still have a strong affinity with the idea of finding and developing expertise. The thing that I might say is that expertise doesn't necessarily need to be developed in one role or even within one career. And it depends on how you draw those lines. Because I think even with careers in general, I think what's changed in the last few decades is really about storytelling, and it's about people being able to define their own narratives of what a career story looks like. So, but again, it's about your ability to storytell, and if there is a story to tell, because sometimes it might just be, oh, I wanted to be a teacher for a few years, and then I hated it, and then I was lots of work, and then I went off and I did some engineering or I did something else, and maybe it's completely disparate. But I think, at least for me as an example, and I think maybe other people, you can find common threads. And I think, okay, going back to me deciding to leave law, and also I've been in other industries technically before law, and we can talk about that. But when I was making that decision, I had to reconcile the fact that I had always wanted to become a partner. And I had to think, okay, if I'm not going to stay and reach the top of this field, like what is the unifying thread in what I go on to do? Like what at the core of what I wanted from that goal of making partner, when I deconstruct that, what do I really want? What do I really care about in a job, in a role? So I know that for me, when I broke that down, I care about working with people, particularly delivering for clients, whether that's internally or externally. I also care about process management, being able to, whether it's running deals or running operations, being able to manage processes and improve them. And so essentially, when you start breaking down some of the core things that you want, then you can actually look around at other fields and other industries and be like, oh, well, actually, I can apply these few things. One, my skill set, and two, my interests, and I can see how that maps to other fields. And also it helps then when you're interviewing, like I'm now in tech. I was interviewing for, a big tech startup, one of the biggest in Europe, or one of the fastest growing in Europe, not the biggest. And, people will say, oh, why did you want to do this? And you need to be able to elucidate those thoughts, and you need to be able to explain, I'm not just hopping around because I felt like it and I saw this job on Indeed. I have really had some deep thought about, at the core, what I want from my career and the skill set I'm looking to build. Skill set is the other part, I think, which is what first came to mind when you were talking. And it's a really interesting one because in my view, I think I probably take a different view here as well. I think even when you're planning the jobs that you want to do, like I don't necessarily know the exact job I'm going to be doing in 5 years. I do know, and I think maybe this might be a helpful tool, is starting from, you guys are very young, start from where you want to be when you're like 30 or even 40, and think of not the exact job you want to be doing, but the space that you want to be in and the kind of opportunities that you want to have. What kind of options do you want to be able to choose from? And then work backwards from there. If you were to be in such a position, what skills would you need to be able to operate at that level? What would you need to know? What would you need to be able to do? And then when you map that back, then now you have almost a game plan of whatever job this is or whatever industry this is, you need to go and acquire those skills. So if you think that, well, I would probably need an additional language, then you've got yourself a good 20-year runway to better start learning some German or whatever it is. And in the same way, you know, if you want to become a bit more operationally proficient, then maybe at some point in your journey, you want to be looking for a role that's going to give you more of an opportunity to do something or other, you know. And so I think that was definitely a good tool that I used in being able to define, even though I don't necessarily know the direction that I want to go in, but I do know the kind of skill set that I need. And that allows me to be very greedy with my jobs. And my current job is a great example. I'm here because I'm here to learn. Like, I am very greedy about learning. I'm not just here, and I think both of you touched on this, and this was something I thought was interesting. I don't know. I think I very much separate the idea of working, and maybe this is just as you grow older and as you have more experience, from the idea of work. I'm not, it depends what you're doing and whether you care about what you're doing. But for me, in my last job and in my current job and going forward, these jobs are about learning. These jobs are about equipping myself for the future. I actually talked about this on another podcast, so you'll have to forgive my rant. But what I'm going to connect this to is I think I can't even remember what I was asked, but the essence is that, in my view, when I'm thinking about life and, you know, what you're trying to do, blah blah blah, realistically, your mental prime is when you're like 50, and I think that's something that's very easy to lose sight of, particularly when we have so much comparison. When you're young, when you're in your 20s, when there's this and that to think about. Like, all of this stuff, you're young, you're still so very young, we're all young. When you're in your mid to late 20s, you're really young. When you're in your 30s, you're still young. When you're in your 40s, you're more operationally equipped. And I guess your mid to late 40s and your 50s, that's when you're deploying everything you've learned and all the skill sets that you've developed. That's when you actually get to use that. And that's probably when you have the most options. Like, that is the real battleground in my mind. And so really, you're using all of this time to plot how you're going to get there and making sure by the time you reach there, you're well equipped. And I think that gives you a much longer runway. I think if you're only just thinking, oh, I need to have this and that by the time I'm 30, like, you're going to stress yourself out. Don't worry about all of that. Take a very long view. Life is long. And that's one thing that I would always remind people of and remind myself of. Life is long. Take a long view. And, you know, you're preparing for a knife fight, and you want to make sure that by the time you get to those later stages of your life, you are well equipped. And so, you know, the reality is that the conversations, like the work that you do now, has some impact, but also it really doesn't. But so much of what you're doing now has very little impact. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but the truth is, until probably like very close to 30 is when things start counting, because someone goes off and does 2 years here, and you see this as you grow with your cohort of people that you went to university with. It almost doesn't matter. Like, someone will just disappear, do a year or 2 years or 3 years in one job, then maybe they'll do something else, and, you know, everyone just kind of bounces around until you get to what, like 26, 27, and then people start making a bit more concrete choices. Do you know what I mean? I think the more you can operationalize that and maybe use those experiences as learning experiences, then that's how you make the most of it. But aside from that, I don't think you're really behind. In the decade since, almost a decade since people took gap years before going to uni, like, who cares anymore? Like, does any of that actually, nobody even remembers that. That was so long ago. And it's funny because when you're younger, you think, oh my gosh, this is going to make or break the rest of my life. If I take a year out now, I'm going to be behind. My colleagues are going to do this and that. It doesn't matter at all. I remember when I was at the law firm I was working at, I'd probably been there at least 2 years or so. And we had a group of not interns, I think they were like VAT schemers or an open day, something like that. And there was someone there that I was in uni with, as in like we were both studying law at the same time. But it doesn't really mean anything. It was a bit of a weird experience, especially knowing that I'd left and they'd stayed and they'd actually worked hard. It's terrible. It's terrible. But the point is, I think that also goes to show that a lot of these things aren't linear, even though people pretend that they are and people pretend that they're supposed to be. It doesn't really matter. I just think, be very selfish with choosing jobs that you're going to learn from. And I know that in my current job, I'm going to be there, whether they want me there or not. Right now, I have so much more to learn by staying in this job that I'm not going anywhere. When I reach a point of saturation where I feel like I've learned a lot and I've learned possibly enough to be a bit more dangerous, then we can start thinking again. Then it's, are you going to pay me some more money? Are there going to be more opportunities for me to develop myself? Then we can start having some conversations about how I'm going to continue growing. Because if I'm not growing, and I know that's all I care about, we've got to fix that. But people make different decisions. I think people have different reasons d'etre. For some, it might be about money. It's about whatever job is going to pay me the most. It doesn't matter what it is. I will shovel bricks. Just give me some money, and that's it. And so, yeah, it definitely depends on what you consider is most important. But I think that's the way I would think about things, and I think that makes it a lot clearer to be able to decide when to leave, because you've just learned enough, or you weren't learning at all and you were just there to collect some money. There's no shame in that. You can spend plenty of months collecting money, but I think at the end of the day, you have to be thinking about long term, what am I getting from this experience? That's the only time in my mind you'll fall behind. Aside from that, if it's a job or a career, whatever it is, as long as you feel like you're learning and developing and you're collecting skills that will be useful to you down the line, it's fine.
I feel like that's quite interesting, because I was reflecting on that, on everything that you're just saying, in line with the question that JJ posed in the beginning. And I guess the main difference between like with us as like millennials and Gen Z, these two generations and our parents' generation was, I guess to summarize it, the two words that were bopping around in my mind were options and motivations. Like our parents didn't have the options that we did now, but we can see a lot more we can see a lot more clearly than they can, because we are educated to be able to understand that, we can really make money doing anything. There's people making money just doing the most silliest, absurd things out there. I mean, absurd for us, but it's normal for them because they've been dreaming for that for quite a while, or they've been planning towards that, and they found the client base or the community that would demand that and then pay them and support them as well. And I guess the second thing was the motivation, is that a lot in conversation with my mom, she's always concerned about, or even with my dad as well, they're always concerned about the security that a job provides, and just holding that above everything else. But I feel like our generations are more concerned about like growth, not just productivity, but I guess money to an extent as well, because like I said, like there's a lot of things that can pay you money, and you don't want to just be living in a bin in London, in the middle of the central London. But yeah, we're a lot more complex in regards to our motivations, and we're not just being motivated by fear of just, all right, cool, let me just get into a job that pays me money so that I can move out my parents' house, or so that I'm not being called a bum, or I'm not. We've got like plenty of time to think about it when it comes to it.
I think that is a double-edged sword as well, though, because I think that is also something that can become hugely paralyzing for, I don't want to say Gen Z specifically, but for young people in general. Because I think what you have now is optionality. You have a variety of options. And the issue then becomes, you end up making decisions to preserve the number of options that you have.
Yeah.
Right? So people still might do safer things just so that they can back out later, and people take less risks and don't want to be as brave, and people are less willing to say, this is where I'm going to plant my flag, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do this, not forever, not for the rest of your life, but even in the intermediary, like even 4 or 5 years, or even for slightly longer. And people really, I don't know, they're just a bit more shifty, they're a bit more agile, they're a bit more easily discomforted, because you know that there are always options out there. If you spend a year in a job and you don't really like it too much, your boss is rubbing you the wrong way, you can just leave. And you know there are other jobs out there. And not specifically, you know, obviously the job market changes. Sometimes it will be hard to get a job, but there's other careers, there's other professions. You could literally just start making YouTube videos one day, and that can be your new job. And I think because in some ways you have so many of those options, if you don't have a North Star or a guiding principle of how you're going to make some of these decisions, I think that's how you could easily be led astray. And so you might have been on one track originally, and then you jump to here, and then you jump to there, and there's no, you know, unifying thread through all of these things. And then now, even in the storytelling exercise in an interview, you don't even know how to explain all of these different things and what is the cohesive story behind them. So I think that's a difficulty as well.
I think that I have like a theory about like Zillennials and Gen Zs. I would love to get you guys' like feedback on this, and I hope I'm not using too much of my own like personal story to like inform this. But when I speak about Gen Z, and I very much hold myself in the middle, like I don't claim either side. There's a phrase, I don't know if you guys have heard it, no thoughts, just vibes. I feel like really like Gen Z, but for all the right reasons, right? I won't get into the negative ones. Like, I feel like when you think about influencers, like the rise of YouTube, and that's very much like millennials, but like the rise of social media, I feel like young people can make anything out of nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like, using aesthetics, filters, like you all think someone is living the most lavish life, even though they have the same basic IKEA furniture as you, they've got the same clothes as you. And I think that's a real skill. So I actually like disagree with you a bit, Dave, when you say that we can't, not we, but you say when young people like stories, I feel like you'd be so surprised. You know why they can as well. Oh, but here's the pushback, right? You're like, when they go to the interviews, the stories aren't really adding up. It's because it's two generations who are, one is the interviewer and one is the interviewee. You're getting interviewed by boomers who are very much grounded in, this is what this job requires, this is what this skill entails, this is how the corporate world or whatever workplace works, right? When you have Gen Z who are like, I know that I could do this job. Like, if you do like those psychometric tests before you apply to a job, they're so rubbish. I can't tell you like how much they don't work, and they are not predictive of job performance at all. Like, I did a whole module on it. When I was applying to grad schemes, if they had a psychometric test, I wrote an email to Ocado and NatWest saying they work. I had my references. Only Ocado emailed me back and they were like, okay, fair enough, but we're still going to use it. NatWest, I'm talking to you. They do not work. They're so ridiculous. But it's because boomers are like, this worked for me. This is how I got in. So this is how everybody else has to get in. See, millennials, we've lived through 2 recessions, coronavirus, and innumerable changes to our education system. We were just talking last week about the change in degrees, like, and what they actually mean. Gabriel, I don't know if you went through this, or David, you might have as well, the change to A-levels and GCSEs. You know, like,
yeah, all that stuff skipped me by. I've been learning vicariously through my sister. I still don't understand.
Yeah.
And as a school governor, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, but I was the year, like, we literally call ourselves the guinea pig generation, where they were just like, let's make these tweaks, let's change this. Like, I've got little brothers in the education system now, and there's only 6 years between us, and they are getting graded in completely different parameters. Now it's numbers, it used to be letters, it used to be O-levels. So I feel
Did you have the numbers as well?
No, I had the letters. But they even changed like the grade boundaries and the way that the time that you would get marked. So when I was doing A levels, it used to be your AS grade and was 50%, and your A level grade was 50%. Whereas when I went into A levels, they made it linear. So all the grades that you took at the end of A levels counted for 100% of your grade, rather than 50. If that makes sense.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Did you also have SATs in year 9?
No.
9?
Okay.
No.
Was it not? Was it not year 6?
Don't worry.
See, so they
Again in year 9. You have them in year 6, and then you have them in year 9.
No, we didn't have them. So they changed it. So I feel like we have a lot less faith in these like exams and these like standardized ways of measuring people and assessing people. Sometimes that might give us like an inflated sense of confidence, but I also think that gives us that kind of like pomp to say, I can do this job. I can go for something else because I know that the marking is BS, basically. Do you know what I mean? Like I know that the way that you're grading me doesn't work. Whereas the boomers who have the control of these doors of power, or these like the door to your next opportunity, they very much believe in it. So there's kind of like a bit of a tension there. And I don't know when that's going to be bridged. Maybe it's when like millennials become the hiring managers, which obviously is like happening now. But yeah, it's a bit frustrating to me to see that. Like,
yeah, I think that is pretty much the answer. I have 2 thoughts. One is more positive, affirming, and the other is less so. So I definitely agree. I think that even going back to my original statement about what flies and what doesn't when you're in the interview room, to clarify, I didn't necessarily mean that it doesn't add up. I mean that if you don't have a guiding principle behind the decisions you make, it will just naturally be hard for you to explain to someone else why this makes sense in a cohesive career story, because it doesn't, because you just felt like doing this and you felt like doing that. But this is the world that we live in. Like it's true that maybe you don't need to have a career story anymore, and there's increasingly a lot of people that don't, because first you do this job, and this is a very good pipeline that I'll give you. Not that I have anyone particular in mind, but you do job A. That could be anything. That could go from being a barista in Starbucks to being a lawyer in a law firm. You stop doing that, you go onto YouTube, you build a platform over a number of years, let's say between 3 and 7 years. After doing YouTube for that amount of time, you become highly proficient and also very moneyed, and you've earned a lot of money. Now you become a consultant to media agencies and also to corporates on one, how to be able to leverage their media and how to leverage media platforms. But 2, hopefully, if you've used that time well, maybe you've invested in some things, you're also now an operator, and maybe you're operationally efficient. And so I think, again, maybe you have this pipeline where different career stories are possible than what were possible before. And in my generation and so far, you do need to have some kind of coherent story to be able to explain how all of these things make sense and not look like you are just a blind wanderer in the desert. And you need to be able to say, actually, I am switched on, sir or madam. I do know what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm doing that. This is where I'm going. I need to have a plan. However, so along those lines, I definitely think that you are right. And I think what's changed that is just the fact that the tools have been democratized. In times past, previously, you relied on institutions. Having a job, doing anything, all the power was within the institution. The reason that you need to be able to do certain jobs or plan your life a certain way is to preserve your chances and opportunities to be able to enter different institutions. And typically, you only get into one, and then that's your career now. And then now you have to stay. And even your jobs, in terms of deciding between jobs within that linear path, are based on maintaining a safe space within that institution. Whereas now, tools have been democratized to the point where, and this was not possible even just over a decade ago. And I think this is why I might differ from what you were saying, in that, I don't necessarily think it's evil that, boomers think this way or people think this way. But you have to remember, it's only from about 1995 that the internet started actually becoming a thing. And a lot of the people that I follow and that I listen to as, I guess, boomers or people that are above me, people like Seth Godin, even Jason Calacanis, there are great investors that passed up on the internet because they didn't even think this was going to be a thing. Like they had opportunities to invest in the infrastructure in some of the internet's earliest companies, and they were like, I don't really know where this thing is going.
Damn.
Right. And so within a decade or two, you go from there to companies worth more than countries that run entirely online. And so I think this is where you have this huge just context switch where for people growing up, I would say definitely after 1995, but particularly in the 2000s at the least, you grow up embedded in the internet. The internet has always been there. Were we not using CD-ROMs in the 2000s?
Not me.
Okay, I don't know. But the point being, I feel like the number of context switches we've had from, I remember when we used floppy disks, there was something before that. I can't actually remember what it's called, but it was like a different shape of floppy disk. Luckily, I'm still very young. I escaped that era. But I remember, you'd go to the supermarket, you get a box of cereal with a floppy disk in. I might have like a little game that runs in 8 bits or 16 bits. It's, really rubbish. But the point is, so much infrastructure has changed. The fact that it is actually possible to make a career completely online, two decades ago, not possible. The fact that not only can you make a career online, but you don't have to rely on any institution or platform to create that opportunity for you. People have become the businesses. And either you are the business that's being operationalized and being used and being sold by Google or by someone else, or you have decided to take hold of that cachet and build it into something that you yourself can weaponize. And that's what influencers do. That's what they do on Instagram. That's what they do on YouTube. That's what they do on TikTok. And now you are your own media agency. And now people will pay you for your output. And I think that's just a completely different reality. And I think that has not been fully realized. However, that said, part of the issue people fall into is thinking that just because these tools have been democratized, that it's going to work for everyone. I think the same power rules or power laws will exist. I don't know if you know what a power law is, but it's essentially just the exponential differentiation between, I don't want to say the people at the bottom and the people at the top, but even just imagine a bell curve of distribution, normative distribution between, the bulk of the people are going to be in the middle. Yes. The outliers, the people that do super well, are going to be in this tiny little sliver at this end. The people that just nothing is even going anywhere are in this tiny little sliver at that end. And the bulk of people are going to be in the middle. And I think it will be interesting to see what the middle becomes. And I think sometimes people, and this is why I say sometimes it can be a mistake to assume that you are going to be right at this end of the bell curve, because all you see, because there's so much comparison now, because kids in Brazil and kids in India and kids in Nigeria and kids in London are on the same internet, using the same app. And it is true that anyone can make it. Anyone can become a TikTok star tomorrow. However, it might not be you. that's what I would say. And, I think you still do need the skill sets. Like there's the skill set that you need now to succeed in some of these platforms is different, but it still exists.
Yes.
You might need some charisma. You might need either you're funny or good looking, or some stuff that you can teach other people, educational. I think there are still constraints despite how much information there is. But there's way more possibilities. If you take a 6-month coding course, now you can code. Now you can build your own things. Now people could hire you to build things, or you could consult, you could freelance. So I think, there's a lot more opportunity. So it goes both ways. The one thing and I was thinking about this today, it was actually Gary Vee. He was having an interview and was talking about, I guess it's partly the future of education. And it's an interesting thought, is that, so what he was saying is part of the issue is that you now have parents that will go and be shouting at teachers because their kids get bad grades at school or whatever. But I do think, and maybe your thoughts will differ as the potential targets of this, is that there are younger generations of people that have not been taught to fail in the same way that older generations have, simply because of the variety of opportunity that is out there. in prior times, you learned very early on, that the opportunities and the window for your success will be very, very narrow. And that is what motivates you to work hard. And that is the stick or the carrot that you are led with to do this, follow this path, go work hard, do all these things. Obviously, I've clearly flaunted some of those things, so I can't talk. But I also think that, even in how kids are taught, we really want to be more empathetic, and I think we've done a good job of that so far. But I wonder to the extent to which maybe we have overextended ourselves in empathy and in being endearing to younger ones. And that's the reason why, for example, many children now consider themselves almost like peers to their parents while still young. And that's why they'll call their mum by their first name and ask them, when are you going to buy me this? No, but this is very different, right? They have completely different expectations of the money that they're going to be given, the opportunities that are going to exist from them. Those opportunities better exist. Otherwise, I'm calling the manager, like, something's gonna happen. Whereas before, you have to, and again, it's not good, but the power was in the institution and you have to be prepared to face them. Whereas now, the institution needs to come to you. The mountain needs to come to Mohammed. I'm not going anywhere. If this institution, even like you were saying, if this company doesn't set up this thing, they better get it right, because I'm not even going to apply. I'm going to tell you it's game over. That's the end. And I'm not targeting you with that specifically, but I am saying that I think that is one key difference. And you see this across universities. If there's a speaker and you don't like the speaker, better cancel the whole thing. Nobody
I'm not standing behind that. Again. I'm not standing behind that. But I do.
I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but I do think that that's just a huge difference in experience growing up. And so you're coming to the workplace with a lot more expectations. And I don't want to say it's entitlement, but it is expectations that things will be set up, that things better be set up in a way that's going to make me succeed, because really you haven't had to fail. Had to, as in definitively. You have an expectation that everyone else will adapt to make things, and things should adapt. And very often these are, like I say, with good intentions, and things should change. But I think that expectation is different. Whereas I think I'm probably in that middling generation as millennials, where we're still, not choking the boomers, but we're still like, okay, please relinquish control so that we can make some change. Whereas Gen Z is like, that change better be today, otherwise they will be held to pay. And and it's a very radical approach.
What do you think, Gabriel? You're like, I could see you like screwing.
I'm literally like, I'm all over the place, because I could totally see that culture on Twitter, where it's just like, I've lost track of the amount of times I've seen the tweet. Like I might seem okay, but deep down, I really just want to get paid for doing nothing. And people actually mean that. Like, people just want to.
So many people, the fact that it's, sorry to interrupt, but I just find it crazy. There is a legitimate school of thought which says, I don't want to work. I want to go up to not work, and I don't want to seem like I'm promoting work houses or anything. But that's just crazy to me. Like, people, and it's a legitimate expectation that, huh?
I feel like this is a personal attack, but I didn't ask you.
It's not. No. I'm saying I see this all the time.
To work, like, I don't get it.
But I think, again, this goes back to what I was saying before, where it's about how you conceptualize work. I don't conceptualize. I'm not going to work just to work. I mean, some days you are. Some days I'm also going to work to get paid. But ultimately, I'm staying here so I can learn some skills. In the past, you will learn those skills so that you could stay at your job and you can work your way up the ladder. I'm learning those skills to make me more versatile, because I can apply those skills in different contexts. I know that. So we do have some mobility, but I think, again, I'm in that in-between generation where generation is younger. I think it's just, you take the same idea and you're just really drawing it out. So now it's like, not just that I want to be able to learn some stuff so I can do what I want with it. It's, why are we learning this stuff? Like, why can I not just breathe and collect the same money? I don't know.
Okay, I can see that this is like 2 against 1. So before you go, Gabriel,
No, it's not. It's not. I'm listening.
I didn't finish my point.
Sorry,
Sorry, Gabriel, finish your point.
I think
Like-
that Gen Z, like, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
okay, you finish and I'll say it.
Yeah, no, like on one side, I like see a part of Twitter, which is just this whole idea of like, yeah, I want to get paid for doing nothing, right? But then on the other side, I see like inspirational Twitter, motivational Twitter. You know those you know those obscene. I don't know if the person who wrote this tweet was joking, but it was. Do you remember that time on Twitter where there was this one person who had tweeted, "Oh, I just told my landlord to up the rent because I really want to hustle or something."
Yeah.
There's
The
like
hustle porn.
there's like two sides of people. There's people who are hungry for struggle and they wanna sweat throughout it all, and they wanna hold on that whole self-made entrepreneur thing. And then you've got the other people who are just like, yeah, I wanna work. Oh no, actually, I don't want to work. I don't want to work at all. And it feels like those are two extremes that I've got to be in one camp or the other, and they always seem to be attacking each other at points until they come together, and then for the sake of mental health, of course.
Okay.
Go on, JJ. Let us hear your strong rebuttal.
This is a thing of like, you know, it brings so much into it, right? Like upbringing, your circumstance, privilege, and like political ideology. But what I will say is that I think I agree with what you're saying, David. Like I've said before, I'm a big sister, and my little brothers are always like, I want Fredo's drip, I want Dave's drip. They watch YouTubers who are playing games and getting like £10 tips, $10 tips every minute, and they think it's gonna be me. And I'm trying to nurture every interest that they have and like genuinely be behind them, because you never know what's going to happen. But so just give them a dose of reality at the same time. And in the meantime, before they make it, they're asking me for it. They're like, oh, can I get some jeans? My middle brother called me the other day. He was like, oh, I really want an essentials tracksuit.
Oh my God.
And I said, when was the last time you saw me buy new clothes? Do you know what that costs? So I 100% agree with you. But in terms of like Gen Z, millennial, boomer, this is why I said boomers are holding the means of production. And I didn't want to bring all these phrases into it, because then people will be like, oh, socialism, but boomers are holding the means of production, whereas they need Gen Z to be the workers, right? And there's a resistance from Gen Z. They're like, we want it this way now. And boomers are like, if you want to get paid, I hold the currency. If you want to get paid, you're going to do it my way. And there's a tension. Some people assimilate, some people are on the fringes, you know? And some of those people who are on the fringes make it, and some of them don't. And they're getting led astray by the glitz and glamour of the people who do make it, selling them false hope. I saw a statistic today that only 13% of people on Spotify make over 50 grand a year in dollars. And it was absolutely shocking. I couldn't believe it. And there's like millions of people of us on Spotify, right? And that just goes to show, when you take out the Drake, the like whoever, Beyonce, how many people who are every day in the studio are actually making a living wage?
Can I add one thing to that? OnlyFans is a funny one. I was going to say scam. It's definitely not a scam. It works for plenty of people, but it is funny when you look at the statistics.
Oh my God.
When I say vast majority, the power law distribution, I'll send it to you in our Slack channel. The power law distribution is completely different. It's far more drastic than almost anything I've ever seen.
Yes.
The only people that are making money are like, when I say money, I mean any money, more than like $100 a day, which is just what you would have been earning just minding your business. Okay. That's like 6% of people. Within that 6% of people, the people that are making actual like good money, good incomes, it's a fraction of a percentage, which is crazy. So more than half of the people on OnlyFans are not making anything. They are not making any money. They are spending time making content, doing all this stuff, no return, zero.
All that risk for nothing.
Yeah. But this is not to shame or to say anything. But I think the issue is when you go on Twitter or you go on platforms and you see, whoa, I'm making 100K on OnlyFans. I'm making so this allure and this false expectation that's fed by, I don't know, the forces of comparison that say, whoa, if you go and do this, whatever the new platform is, if you go and do this, you can make money. And I think maybe the difference I would point out with OnlyFans compared to like TikTok is, okay, people will go onto TikTok for clout and to try and make their videos blow, but there's not always the expectation that you're going to become a TikTok influencer and be able to make money from that. What people still do want is the recognition and the clout. On OnlyFans, you're not getting either of those things. As in, for 50% of the people, none of those things.
Yeah.
If you want to make even just what you could have made in a restaurant, you now have to be in a serious high percentage of people. And that's just the statistics. So that's not me saying anything. That's not how I feel. That's just what the numbers are. So yeah, go on. I just wanted to add that.
Even if you were to look at the OnlyFans thing, like month to month, how many people, like what they're actually making in a year, because there's a big boom. Like when I imagine there's a lot of celebrities in the people who are making the most money, right? Everybody joins up the first month and then you realize they're only posting like bikini pictures. Everyone's like, ah. So I would like see like the drop off after a month. I would actually be really upsetting. But yeah, it's two things. I would say that Gen Z are a lot more idealistic, and that always happens with younger generations, right? People say, oh, when you get older, you become more conservative, God forbid. But I think that Gen Z is like very idealistic, and you two are kind of like liberals, right? You're like, okay, some change, but not too much. I can still assimilate. Whereas Gen Z are like, no, we want the radical change. I want work-life balance. For me, I would say, yeah, I'm on the radical side, but I still know how to assimilate. Obviously, yes, I'm going to show up for work every day, but when I clock off at 5 o'clock, I will be saying, F this job, da 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 da. Like when I think about my life, 10 years time, and I'm thinking about my dream life, it's not messaging my manager like, oh, this is what I've done, or, going to a work meeting. It's me sitting by the river with an easel, drawing, it's me chatting with my friends. Do you know what I mean? So obviously I can understand like the getting the life skills and stuff like that. Like obviously, yes, that's a great bonus to having a job. But I feel like because of the recession, because of all these changes made to education, younger people have become, what do you call it? When you like the rose tinted glasses come off, they've become disenfranchised by like the traditional ways of making money, the traditional institutions. And unfortunately, they're being caught by all these people that sell dreams. And that's like every conversation I have with people always come to that. I hate the people on YouTube who are like, if you're genuinely giving information, that's one thing. But the people who are like, and you're also seeing social media companies cashing on that as well. TikTok, OnlyFans, they're not marketing themselves to just users anymore. They're saying, come to us for this clout. Come be TikTok made a creator fund. Instagram, if you look up anything about Instagram news, it's not about changes made for actual users. It's to maximize their profit. It's to maximize the profit for people. They tell you that if you're a business, they're maximizing your profit, but really they're getting their own. So when you don't make it, when you're not in those percentage of people that make it, that company is still going to get theirs. Do you know what I mean? OnlyFans is still tax off your money. The TikTok creator fund is absolutely horrible. Apparently, people are getting like 8p a view, something silly. Everybody knows YouTube AdSense is terrible as well. So the companies have cottoned onto that. And unfortunately, they're going to catch all the people who are disenfranchised by traditional ways of working. And yeah, it's just another way for them to make money off you. I also think with like Uber and like, all these kind of like gig economies, I don't know if you guys think Uber has to start treating their workers like workers now. Thank God for that. And but they were ready to leave.
It's funny, I got this email today, which was, I don't know if you guys got it, if you're Uber customers, but it's just like, oh, here's all the things we're doing for our workers now, as in for our drivers. And it's funny because it's like, you fought so hard for like a
Yes.
decade to not have to do these things. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, now they get holiday. Now they get, I don't know, just basic human rights.
The
But
thing
anyway,
that the
continue.
told you to put in. But yeah, I feel like I definitely agree with you guys. There's kind of like a choice fatigue. Like you just see like so many different options, and within each option, there's so many different niches that you could be in. I feel like people are kind of waiting around for the next thing. Like you're saying that people missed out on the internet, David. Today, people are looking for what is that next social media app that's I can blow on before everybody else, so I can beat those statistics. What is the next kind of niche that I can fall into? And that's why you get so many multi-hyphenates, because people are kind of just like hedging their bets and kind of just like waiting around. Tech is the new buzzword. You ask somebody, what do you want to go do in tech? I don't know. And I'm talking about myself. They'll be like, I'm getting into tech. Do you know what I mean? And in 5 years, it's going to be, AI, it's going to be this, that, and the other. And again, there are people rubbing their hands, waiting to make the real money. So those are the boot camps selling information. So I guess my maybe I've come full circle. Maybe it does pay to be an expert, because then you can sell the information and you're constantly regenerating. But yeah, I am worried about that kind of like choice fatigue and being seduced by these kind of like gigs and like side hustles and until you realize, oh my God, I'm 50 and I don't have a career. I don't have anything to my name. I don't own anything that I've made, So I think there's definitely two arguments to be made about it.
Yeah, I think one thing I was just going to say is that, I mean, the optionality thing, it doesn't mean that you can't do both. I think of myself as an example, just in terms of the last thing you were saying, like I'm still podcasting and I have a newsletter, and I started all of those things when I was still working in law, and I was writing and I started a business and I was doing other things. So I think you can definitely still have side hustles and you can definitely still learn. I think the issue is maybe going all in too soon, or just not testing the market, because maybe we are in such a frictionless society now that you don't have to test the market as much. You can just quit your job. Let's see what happens. Let's see how it goes. Let me just give it a shot. Whereas that's something you couldn't do in the same way before. And it's interesting, even when you were talking about the Spotify payments. So I was on YouTube a really long time ago, as in the last video, obviously I'm going to be uploading videos now, but the last video I uploaded before now was like 2012. And that is back when I was a YouTube partner. You had to apply manually to become a YouTube partner. And it's not even like, an instant form. I'm pretty sure you had to like email, or it was like a serious thing that you had to apply. And I got rejected like twice. I got accepted the third time. And there was also, the requirements were higher. You needed to have, I don't remember now, I think at least like 10,000 subscribers, a bunch of other stuff. I only ended up getting it because, I didn't have the subscribers, but what I did have, I used to make lots of playlists, and I had like over 100,000 views in total, something like that, across like the play. But these are playlists as in like of me collecting other people's videos. I wasn't even doing much. But then I made some videos, but again, I was making what for the time would be considered a lot of money, even during university. I was getting like £200 a month, which then that's huge. That was like me and MKBHD, we're killing it, baby. Obviously we weren't at the same level, but he was one of my inspirations early on. But it's funny how that was a huge success for me personally back then. That's like nothing now in terms of what people can make. There are people making tens of millions of dollars, which is insane. And it just was not like that then. And so even the expectation of, I'm here, maybe I have to apply. I have to work really, really, really hard. Then I have to apply. If I get accepted, maybe I can make a little bit that I can add and contribute towards my rent, compared to this is my life. This is my living. This is how I make my money. And that's what's so interesting now when you give power to, I guess these are almost the new institutions in a way. Before it was, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Goldman Sachs, different institutions that you had to work at. Now it's the platforms. Now, anytime the Instagram algorithms change, people are panicking. People are shaking in their boots. If the YouTube algorithm changes, people's livelihoods are at risk. because that is how they eat bread every month. Like if they make one tweak and you don't even know what the motivations are, is it so that the users could have a better experience? Is it so that they can generate more ad revenue? You don't know, but all you know is if it changes one day, everybody's panicking. Now there's like 17 videos going up how to beat the new Instagram algorithm. The algorithm just changed. This is what you have to do now. You have to, and that's partly why I stopped. I wouldn't say I was an influencer, but I got paid to do some brand stuff on Instagram. Cool. But as soon as I felt, it got to a point where I liked my Instagram just for the ability to post, the ability to, I'm a photographer, I like photography. I'm almost curating my own artboard, even if I'm the subject of the photo sometimes. I don't know, it's a way of self-expression. If I can get paid to do that, fine, like fantastic, sensational. But it got to a point where Instagram was just forcing it so much that even for my own friends, like people that know me in real life, to see the things that I post, I now have to start performing the Instagram dance, and I have to do the thing. I have to shake my leg when they tell me to shake my leg. I have to do all the things that they say I have to do to get my post seen. And like, if I post something and it doesn't get enough views, that means the next time I post something, not as many people will see it. And now, so that means I only have to perform. I can only post content that's gonna perform. If I post something that's just for fun because I want to post it and I don't care, because I genuinely don't care how many people like it, I'm just posting it because I took this picture, it looks nice, or this is what I want to post. There's penalties.
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting how, I guess this is the world we live in. One thing I'd really like to talk about, maybe we'll do it in another session, or maybe we'll just cut it and then pretend it was another session. But it's even just what you were saying in terms of these alternative incomes and people earning money in different ways. And I guess one part is how precarious it is, but also the opportunities, because it was something I was thinking about earlier. Someone was asking about, how do I make, and it's something going back to what Gabriel was saying in terms of, these hustle porn people where they're like 6 figures of income or 6 income streams. You need to have this income stream, you have to have that income stream. 2 things. First of all, what's funny is I probably have a lot of income streams. I'm not even counting. I don't actually care. I'm just hungry. If there's another opportunity that I can make a little, so I'm just gonna do it. I'm not adding this up and thinking, oh, this is my 5th income stream, but I need 11. Nobody's doing any of that. Anyway, that's just my initial thought. But also, what I find really interesting is the difference in how much of this has become self-serving. Like the reason, I think it's just very different, the dynamic, because now it's like, oh, I'm posting videos. I don't even care. People just want to do YouTube to make money. People aren't posting videos on a video sharing platform because people will like it or find it entertaining or because they have something to share. People are not starting businesses because they have a service to offer the world. People are starting businesses because they want to make money. But that's not an issue in and of itself. But when you have this dynamic where people are like, oh, I saw someone today who was like, oh, I'm making all these videos on TikTok, but how do I become an influencer? How do I? And I'm like, okay, I think, and this is, this will be a nice little. At the end of the day, I think people forget what money is. Money is a store of value. Before we had coins and paper, like we bartered for things, we traded for things. You give me this, I'll give you that. And I think that's what people are missing, because now things have been gamified to an extent where people just think they can just take, they can just accept. Money will just come. As long as I show up, money will just enter my wallet. And people forget that you have to give and you have to generate value that goes into the world. And that's what people pay you for. And that's why in my mind, it always comes back down to skills, because it's like, what skills are you building? Even if it's just being funny or being able to, being charismatic or being able to garner attention, that's something you have to build and you have to work at. And that's something people are not recognizing. All people see is opportunity to make money, and they just want to show up. And if the money doesn't fall into my lap, it's a crime. Something's happening, something's wrong. The algorithm is broken, but the algorithm is not broken. The algorithm, I mean, some of them are really rubbish, mind you. It's not me, yeah. But what people are really forgetting is the part where you add value. And if you just turn up on some app, even if your posts are banging off, and you're asking like, oh my gosh, why are people not paying me? What are you contributing? Like,
Yeah.
stop thinking from the perspective of, oh, how can I monetize this? Don't think about how you can monetize this. The only reason it's going to be monetized is because people are paying you for something they perceive to be valuable. On some platforms, even like YouTube as an example, or I think on Instagram now they have stickers. The value that they're paying you for is your entertainment. So it is the service you're providing in and of itself. But on other platforms, if you're monetizing it, that means you need to provide something additional that people actually find valuable enough to exchange an amount of money that they think is fair value for that. That's how you monetize things. So it's not. So I think that's just one thing I want to dispel, because I think a lot of people think about like their one focus point is just, how do I make money? How do I monetize something? They don't even care what it is. Something needs to be monetized. Money needs to enter the account. And I know we can talk about on a societal level, that's probably a failing in the fact that, you know, wages have been stagnant for decades and we haven't gone anywhere. And it's crazy to me that even though there's some parts to which I am empathetic or I understand from the business's side, I still think it's ridiculous that the wages people, like a starting salary now for someone entering the workforce, is exactly the same as a decade ago. And it's probably almost the same as a decade before that. There's people that are still, one of my first jobs was 18K. I had 2 jobs that I got paid 18K. There's people entering the workforce now that are earning 18K. That's crazy to me. That doesn't make any sense, because years have passed. Inflation just naturally by itself, changing nothing else, that number should be bigger.
Yeah.
But it's not. And even a decade before that, there's people entering the workforce that were getting paid 18K to start a job in London. This is all in London. And so, yeah, there's issues. So I think on one part, maybe it's societal failing, but I think on the other part, I think people just need to have some empathy, or people just need to think, start from the place of, I want to contribute value and I have value to share and I have something that I want to give, rather than I need something, how do I get it? How do I get this thing? Whether it's clout, whether it's, you know, I don't know, Instagram money, YouTube money, something. I need it.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. I would say the businesses should show empathy first. I know
no, of course.
Entitled Gen Z, but I'm sorry, but capitalism pushes its boot against our head every day. And now I need to go to the company and beg on my hands and knees for a job. Do you know
That's not what I'm saying.
I know that's not what you're saying, but it's hard for like the employee to be like, this is what I'm bringing, da 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 da, when if you get fired tomorrow, they will replace you with no qualms. They won't be like, oh, he was so valuable, unless you get to a certain point. Do you know what I mean? If you're an ethical person, they'll just, that's why I say that like young people don't believe in all these barriers to entry. Like people say now in entry-level jobs on LinkedIn, 2 years experience, 1 year's experience for an 18K job. I looked at a job once, 12K. I was like, it was for an apprenticeship as well, but I had like applied for so many jobs. I was like, I just need a job. Let me apply for it. I looked at rent in the area that it was, and I could not even find one property I could rent on that salary after tax. And I still applied for it. I was like, I'll find a way to make it work. So that's how I understand people coming into the workforce already jaded, already like one eye out the door. Do you know what I mean? Already like, how can I just rob this England? Because they're already like so disenfranchised before they enter the workplace, before they even got that first job. And it's for everything that you're saying, all those societal failures, you know, like the low wages, like inflation. People have had their, you know, the age that you get your pension is like constantly increasing. So we're just like, and you see your mate who left secondary school, nothing wrong with that, but they didn't work as hard as you, and now they're playing basketball on Xbox, on Twitch, and they're rolling around in an Audi. you're at this like traditional job. You know, it's enough to make anybody jaded. So I would say that the companies need to come with a bit of empathy first, and then I think they'll definitely see it from the work. Have you ever like gone to people older than you in your workplace and be like, let's do things like this. I've got this amazing idea. And they'll listen. I'm like, and either nothing happens or somebody takes your idea like for their own. And especially working in social media, especially when you work in things that are like constantly changing. I've had that happen to me at a past internship. And you say all these amazing ideas and they're just like, no, we're going to do it the way that we were always doing it because that's just the process in place. And then you just think, okay, how am I learning? But you've got to play the game. You've got to play this like silly, like corporate dance, this like...
I mean, I don't necessarily think that you should.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that. I left my job that's really hard to get into. Ironically, yeah, a lot of jobs that are really hard to get into, I don't actually care. I think, okay, I care. It's great to get in. I think I was probably a bit spoiled with my last job because I got into one of my dream firms anyway. And I think when you're already at a top firm in the career that you wanted, that was my dream job. And then it's like, what else is there to dream about? Because where else if I had got into a firm that wasn't as good, I feel like I'd probably have felt more of a need to prove myself and more like I have to work hard and all of these things. But going back to what you were saying, I do think that I agree, but I wouldn't say, I think this is why for me it comes back to just building a skill set. I don't think that you should be accepting that this is the way things need to be. I'm not like that. Nobody can tell me there's any way things need to be. It's going to be the way I tell it. I mean, not I tell it to be, but I'm just going to make it happen the way it needs to be for me. But I do that by building my skill set. And I think the issue is that people are feeling like they can skip that step of however you build your skill set, wherever you find the tools, needing to learn some stuff. Like, even if you want to be on TikTok, you have to be good at it. Whatever, you need to find out what the barometers are for a TikTok to pop off, and you need to manufacture the will and the effort and the skill set, and you probably need to iterate a lot of times and fail a lot of times to get it right. And when you hit whatever the magic combination is, then maybe it will work out. But I think a lot of people don't even want to make that effort. In the same way, lots of people in traditional roles will have had to fail loads and loads of times in order to get a promotion. People don't even want to make 50 TikToks before they're asking, when am I going to get paid for making these TikToks?
Yeah.
Make some stuff. People on YouTube that have not even made 50 videos that are asking when they're going to be monetized. Have you done any work? Like, do in the kindest way possible. There are people that can do that without having to put in that work. But I think whatever it is that you're trying to do, there's an element to which you need to build some skills, you need to build some experience. Whether that's on like a new age platform, that might be YouTube, your TikTok, your Instagram, or an old age platform that might be a bank or a law firm or teaching or being a nurse. Like there's a extent to which you do have to put in a bit of time. You do have to develop at least whatever the basic skill set is in order to profit off it. Or maybe if you can combine skill sets, maybe you've learned some other things from somewhere else and you can apply that to this role, and then you can multiply your efforts. But I just think that, again, going back to something you said earlier, JJ, the benefit that you have that I think a lot of people still take for granted is that you have the internet. It's crazy to me that you can just read any book. Even for me, that's why I buy books literally every day. I grew up across the road from a library, and I would still like hide books because someone else might take them, and like you still had to go to the library in order to read the books. You couldn't just have the books. Even Amazon is relatively new. You know what I mean? At least in its current conceptualization. So there's a lot of things that you could literally just learn. I say this to my sister. I won't say too much before she comes to fight me, but the point is that I think there's a lot of skills that if you want to learn them, the same way I learned loads of stuff on YouTube and on the internet. I was doing design work when I was like 14 and I was getting paid up to £500 to do design work. But that I wasn't born with those skills. I'm sorry, that's not like a humble brag or whatever. But my point is that like no. What I mean, because this is what I say to my sister or other young people, like you can just go on YouTube. You're sitting here watching. Let me hypothetically, someone could be watching,
Crew's gonna come.
makeup tutorials, or just something random on YouTube. This is the same YouTube you could be using to learn some stuff and get people to pay you money. So then you wouldn't have to be worrying about who's going to pay you for a job, or have to be worrying about how you're going to do this or that. Do you know what I mean? Like, the tools to be able to democratize your future and to do what you want and not have a boss are actually right there. There's not enough people that actually take that seriously and spend the time and effort and are willing to put in the time to just learn and take those things and run with them, because you can. Like, you actually have more time than any generation before you has had. You have more resources than any generation before you has had. And that's why I find it odd that it's not odd, I know why, but it's sad and unfortunate that so many people still feel disenfranchised in the way that you do, when there's just more possibility. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's my thoughts, but I know I've bored you all with my rambling.
No. Can I just say some closing remarks? I think that, okay, there's a ideal world and then there's reality, right? In the ideal world, I would say to anybody, I am minister of enjoyment. You shouldn't have to work to live. There should be a universal basic income. And if, however you get your success, I'm here for it. So it was a slip of the tongue earlier. If you've got no GCSEs, if you've got all the education in the world, whatever success you have, I'm so happy for you. I am just really sad about all the people who get sold a dream and don't end up reaping the benefits of it, because the nature of capitalism is that they will only let so many people up at a time. So unless you are born into wealth, if you are trying to break into that wealthy gap, it is literally just luck of the draw. You can try as hard as you can, you might not make it. It might be the one video that gets you there. Do you know what I mean? There is no rhyme or reason. It is the algorithm of life, and there's nobody to explain. In the real world, I would say, yeah, I think the skill set thing has given me a lot to think about. And that's definitely how I've tried to start thinking about, okay, where do I see myself in 10 years? So to bring it back to the beginning, when I'm talking to my friends about that 10-year plan, I'm saying I see myself being able to do this rather than making concrete plans. And that comes back to my point. I think that's just in our nature as some young people, I won't say everybody, I find it hard to make concrete plans just because so much has changed in my short lifespan, where I'm like, in 10 years time, the world will look completely different, whether we like it or not. Even if the boomers still will be in power because they won't be old enough yet to be retired, just by nature of climate change, by the speed that technology is adapting, the world will look so much different. So I'm trying to be a bit more value-based. And I think instead of saying, okay, I'm going to go in depth on this career, I think it'd be really cool to say, I'm going to go in depth on this skill set. And then hopefully that can be adaptable in the future. If I'm amazing at Adobe now and I keep up with the updates, maybe I'll be amazing at Adobe in the future. Do you know what I mean? Or I'll be primed to pick up the next program. That's just an example. Do you know what I mean? Like, so if you're like, okay, I'm gonna work on my maths or my coding, you'll meet AI in the future, that kind of thing. So that's the kind of advice I would give people. So yeah, even in private, I'm in the anarchist meetings, but I'm still going to my 9 to 5, and I'm gonna try and pick up the skills that I can. So I think that's some really good advice for people, and I like that approach.
Awesome. I'm glad we got somewhere in the end. JJ, Gabriel, do you have any closing remarks before we wrap up and let people go home?
I like the point that you made out of just kind of like the onslaught barrage of information that you're just giving to us. But like, I think the point that stuck with me the most was something, it was almost like confirmation as to what I've been seeing, is that it's not about what you get, it's not about what you can get, it's about what you give ultimately. If you're a giver, it's I don't know how to describe it, but there's something about giving, even when people seem to take so much from you, that things seem to find you, blessings seem to find you as that person. Because if you see the value in what you have, and you know that no one can ever kind of manipulate that from you or make you feel like it's so much less, and you recognize that the value in itself can only be truly appreciated when other people appreciate around it with you. It's like all this sense of work and all this sense of trying to build who you are and trying to find an income, no matter what you do or where you find yourself, you're going to be willing to work. You're going to be willing to receive. Obviously, like, I agree with the point that you're making about it's about how you can learn and how you can grow as well. But ultimately, seeing employment opportunities and even business opportunities and entrepreneur opportunities about the value that you can give and committing to that, because a lot of people see the short term, they're crippled by it. And I think that was quite motivating to me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for your time. Oh, JJ, did you want to say one more thing?
I just wanted to say, Gabriel, I think you're completely right. There are people that will always land on their feet. Maybe I've been thinking in extremes of like rich and like not rich, but yeah, definitely. You know, we all know hardworking people. Hopefully, we're all hardworking people. Talking to us who will land on our feet, like no matter what circumstance come to us. We all have that uncle or maybe like male figure in our life who's always selling something, got a new business, like, you know, has got like a new winning idea. And I think those people are like, they will stand the test of time. Sales, charisma, just like you said, David, those are all skills that have been around since the Middle Ages. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, you're completely right that there is a happy medium, and hard graft will get you there. There's no doubt about that.
We got there in the end. Look at us getting along.